My name is Aurora Miller, 31 years old, and I never thought the long, exhausting nights in the lab would lead me to a moment that would define my entire life. I'm a scientist specializing in treatments for late-stage breast cancer, having spent the past 8 years working in the cold, sterile rooms of the Boston Institute of Medicine. Every day I started my shift before the sun came up and returned home when the city was quiet, always wondering if anyone truly understood or appreciated the passion I was pursuing. Last week, I was invited to attend the International Cancer Conference in San Francisco, a major turning point in my career. My presentation on a new method targeting drug-resistant cancer cells received praise from many leading professors. In that moment, I believed every effort, every sleepless night, every tear was worth it. Yet just a few hours later, on the flight back to Boston, I felt a heaviness in my heart as I thought about the house I shared with my mother and brother, a place that never valued my achievements. My mother, Vivian, 62 years old, is a traditional woman who has always believed that a woman's greatest value is to marry young and care for her husband and children. To her, my PhD and international conferences were just trivial pastimes, compared to my brother Ethan, 34, who runs a small furniture shop and is about to marry his fiancée, who's 3 months pregnant. In my mother's eyes, Ethan is the treasure of the family. Whenever he reached his average monthly sales goal, the whole family celebrated with a party. But when I published a paper in a prestigious medical journal, I received a half-hearted compliment. "Yeah, that's great, but when are you going to settle down?" I remember vividly the family dinners, where every question was directed at Ethan, about his store, about preparing for the baby, while I was only mentioned when my mother asked, "Are you still thinking about dating?" Each time, I just forced a smile, staring at my cold, untouched salad. This favoritism wasn't anything new. Since high school, I always had the highest grades, but the reward was just a nod. Meanwhile, Ethan only had to join the basketball team, and Mom called every relative to brag. I kept telling myself that if I persisted, someday Mom would be proud of me. But the reality was far from it. Before flying to San Francisco, I was excited to tell Mom over the phone. "Mom, I'm about to present in front of more than 500 top experts." There was a pause on the other end. Then she asked indifferently, "So, when are you going to give me a grandchild?" I sat frozen at the airport, watching people drag their suitcases by, feeling invisible. The few days in San Francisco were when I truly lived my passion. I met people who valued knowledge, who told me, "Aurora, your research has the potential to save thousands of women." I felt a respect I had never experienced in 31 years at my own home. My confidence and desire to make a difference burned stronger than ever. But on the flight back, as the plane began to descend, I realized I still had to return to the place called home, where my efforts were dismissed as a silly hobby. I thought of Ethan and the party Mom had surely prepared to celebrate him for hitting his record monthly sales. Meanwhile, my career milestone went unmentioned by Mom. I leaned my head against the window, watching the clouds drift by, feeling they were closer companions than my own family. Everything will probably go back to the way it was, I thought. I'll come home and keep being the shadow in a house full of cheers for Ethan. Yet I had no idea that returning earlier than planned would unveil a truth that changed everything. A truth prepared behind my back for months, right inside the house I thought was my safest haven. After my father, Charles Miller, passed away suddenly from a stroke 5 years ago, the house I grew up in with my family in the suburbs of Newton, Massachusetts, became an overwhelming burden on Mom. When he was alive, Dad was the only one who truly understood and supported my passion for research. But after he died, everything started to fall apart. The property tax bills, maintenance costs, and old mortgage payments all left Mom overwhelmed. I still remember the night we sat around the dinner table when Mom, in tears, asked, "What should I do to keep this house?" The room was filled with the ticking of the clock, and I could only sit in silence. A few days later, Ethan suggested a solution. The three of us would invest together to buy out the house so Mom wouldn't have to move. It sounded perfect. Ethan would live on the first floor with his soon-to-be wife, Hannah, 29, a bank employee. I would move to the second floor, converting it into a cozy studio apartment. Mom would stay in the small rear unit Dad had once renovated as his study. Each of us would have our own space, but still be under one roof. The idea of being closer to Mom and having a chance to bridge the emotional gap made me believe this was a fresh start for our family. I decided to withdraw all my savings from my research scholarship and years of salary to cover nearly 60% of the house's value. Ethan contributed the rest with money Hannah's mother gave them before the wedding. In my heart, it was proof of my effort. My first time feeling I wasn't just an outsider. Instinct told me to be careful, so I asked my late father's lawyer, Sylvia Watkins, a tough Jewish woman in her 70s, to draft a clear co-ownership contract. Sylvia advised me, Aurora, you can trust your family, but black and white paperwork is what protects you when things go wrong. At first, Mom and Ethan were annoyed, saying I was overcomplicating things, but I stood my ground. We eventually signed an agreement that guaranteed absolute privacy for each party, forbidding intrusion into personal spaces, and required mutual consent for any event with more than 15 people in the house. Personally designed my second-floor apartment, a compact kitchen, a desk facing the window looking out to the maple trees, a cozy bedroom with a bookshelf stretching across the wall. Every morning I loved waking up to the dawn pouring through the curtains, making myself a cup of coffee and diving into the latest medical journals. That was my own world. The only place where I felt truly free. The first few months went more smoothly than I expected. Ethan and Hannah were busy planning their wedding, Mom was tending to the little vegetable garden behind the house, and I kept leaving early and returning late, spending most of my time in the lab. On the rare evenings I wasn't working, I'd come down for dinner with the family, sit and listen to Mom excitedly talk about wedding plans, occasionally chiming in with a small suggestion. I thought that if I just kept trying a bit longer, the cold relationship between Mom and me would finally start to heal. But gradually, I began to notice odd signs. Hannah would often go up to the second floor when I wasn't home to borrow my makeup or hairdryer without asking. One night when I came home late, I found Mom rummaging through the kitchen drawers in my apartment, supposedly looking for spices. When I asked her to text me before coming upstairs, she snapped, "I'm your mother. Do I really need to make an appointment to see you in this house?" Every time that happened, I had to calm myself down, telling myself it was just a generational difference. I didn't want to be that uptight daughter who nitpicked over every little thing, but the sense of unease kept growing. I started locking my door whenever I went out, which made Mom even more upset. Ethan's attitude also cooled. He kept stressing, "This is everyone's house. No one should act like they're living in a hotel." The final straw came one March night when I returned from an overnight shift and found Hannah leading two unfamiliar girlfriends straight into my apartment. They were laughing, opening my closet drawers one by one. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand clenched tightly around my key. "Aurora, you're home earlier than we thought," Hannah said with an awkward laugh, but all I heard was a deafening ringing in my ears. I realized then that the boundaries set in our contract only meant something if everyone respected them. More and more, I came to see the harsh truth. To Mom and Ethan, this house was never really mine. It was just a tool to keep Mom nearby and preserve the image of a perfect family. As for me, even though I contributed the majority of the money, I was still an outsider in my own home. And I had no idea that these small intrusions were only the start of a quietly orchestrated plan that would lead to a shocking moment, one that forced me to fight for my rights and dignity. The conference in San Francisco ended a day earlier than planned, so I changed my flight, eager to return home and rest after the intense week. All I could think about was my soft bed, a cup of chamomile tea, and a peaceful evening reading over my conference notes. I had even bought a few small gifts, a Golden Gate Bridge keychain for Mom, and a set of crystal wine glasses for Ethan and Hannah. A fragile attempt at reconciliation I told myself I had to make one more time. The taxi pulled up in front of the house, and I nearly froze in place. The quiet street was now packed with cars lining both sides. The lawn was strung with twinkling lights, balloons swayed everywhere with the words, "Miller and Wallace family, forever united," fluttering in the breeze. Loud music and laughter poured from inside, mixed with kids' screams and the pounding of feet on the wooden floor. I dragged my suitcase, heart thudding painfully as I approached the door. Through the living room window, I saw dozens of people mingling, glasses clinking, tables overflowing with food, a giant cake, and a massive banner hanging on the main wall. Family means forever. I blinked rapidly, wondering if I had come to the wrong house, but then I started recognizing faces, both familiar and barely remembered. Uncle Henry, who I'd only met once in middle school, Aunt Grace from Texas, Cousin Jenna, whose birthday I couldn't even recall. I stepped inside, the air heavy with a mix of food and perfume. The entryway was crammed with coats and shoes of every size. I had to dodge several kids tearing through the hallway as I made my way deeper into the house, my mind spinning. The noise died down when someone finally spotted me. "Aurora! Oh my gosh, she's back!" Aunt Nancy's voice rang out, and dozens of eyes turned to me. In that instant, every conversation seemed to freeze, the air thick with awkwardness. I noticed every wall covered in family photos. Ethan and Hannah on vacation, mom with relatives, grandparents' portraits, but not a single picture of me. Ethan's forced laugh broke the silence. "Hey, sis, you're back earlier than expected." He awkwardly set down a tray of cocktails and walked over with a crooked smile. Hannah stood beside him, eyes darting nervously between us, like she was afraid I'd explode at any second. And Mom, Vivian, sat in the dining room, wearing her favorite beige cardigan, animatedly chatting with older relatives. When our eyes met, she froze, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "What is going on here?" I asked, my voice shaking, unable to keep calm any longer. I looked around. My living room was littered with dirty dishes, wine bottles, and frosting-smeared sofas. Balloons lined the staircase, and I could even hear kids giggling from my own bedroom upstairs. "Oh, we're having the Miller-Wallace family reunion," Ethan stammered, glancing nervously at Hannah. "Everyone's been planning this for months. We thought you wouldn't care about something like this." "Wouldn't care?" I repeated, eyes fixed on Mom. "How long have you known about this?" She looked at me, then at Ethan, her hands twisting in her lap. "Aurora, I just wanted to bring the family closer. Ethan said you were busy, always away for work, so I thought it'd be easier to have it while you were out of town." I felt the floor sway beneath me. I had poured most of my money into buying this house, signed an agreement guaranteeing privacy, yet my apartment had become a free hotel for distant relatives. I glanced at my suitcase trailing behind me, suddenly feeling like it symbolized how out of place I was in this family. A little girl, about 4 years old, dashed past me holding my teddy bear, the one my dad gave me before he passed away, the one I always kept by my bed. I shouted, "Don't touch that!" The child dropped the bear in fright, eyes welling up with tears. Instantly, I heard whispers all around me, accusing stares from relatives. "Oh, wow, Aurora is always so uptight. She's so busy she's turned cold." The noise swelled again, the music grew louder, but it all sounded muffled to me. Ethan leaned in close, his voice low but sharp. "Aurora, don't make a scene. This is a special day for the family. You don't want to ruin everything, do you?" I stepped back, my eyes sweeping over the house that now felt like a battlefield. The crowd kept growing, unfamiliar faces crossing the threshold of my home with plates of food and gifts, chatting merrily. I realized no one saw this as an invasion. In their eyes, I was just someone standing on the sidelines of a party, built, in part, with my own money. And in that moment, I understood clearly. I wasn't just excluded from the celebration. I had been erased from the perfect family portrait they'd been building for a long time. Nearly charged up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard it hurt, each footstep slamming into the wooden floor like a release of rage. My bedroom door was ajar, giggles drifting out through the crack. I pushed the door open hard and froze. On my bed, two kids were rolling around playing on my iPad, the screen clearly displaying confidential work emails from the Research Institute. The floor was littered with suitcases, adult and kids' clothes mixed together. My vanity was covered with unfamiliar makeup, the air thick with pungent perfume, mingled with crumbled snack food, all over the carpet. My eyes swept the room in shock. The photo of me and Dad at my graduation was gone from my nightstand. In its place was Ethan and Hannah's wedding portrait. My bedding had been swapped out for a garish cartoon print set, my bookshelf shoved into a corner, important medical documents scattered, some crushed under a blanket fort the kids had made. A cold fury surged through me. I turned to Hannah, who was leaning against the doorway with a strained smile. Aurora, don't blow this out of proportion. The kids are just staying in your room for a few days because the first floor is too crowded. Staying? I nearly screamed, my voice echoing down the hall. This room is my private space. What right do you have to let others sleep here? She crossed her arm, shrugging. You're always gone, so leaving the room empty is a waste. Besides, Ethan already said it. If you're not using it regularly, you should let the family have it. Everyone benefits. I was speechless. At that moment, Mom appeared at the top of the stairs, her face darkening. Aurora, come down and talk with me and Ethan. Don't cause a scene. The family is watching. Caught between my fury and the prying eyes below, I had no choice but to walk down to the dining room. Ethan sat waiting, hands clasped on the table. When he saw me, he motioned for Mom to sit next to him, then looked straight into my eyes, his tone patronizing. Aurora, you know since Dad passed, Mom has been struggling to keep this place together. You're always away, and Hannah and I have been managing everything, so I think it would be best if you sold your share of the house to us. Sell it to me and everything will be easier to sort out. Plus, you'd have extra money to focus on your research career. I glared at Ethan, unable to believe what I was hearing. You're saying I should sell the house, where I put almost all my savings? Mom interjected, her voice sugary sweet. Aurora, sweetheart, don't cling to a place you hardly ever stay in. Ethan and Hannah are about to have a baby. They need the space. And your job has you traveling constantly. Wouldn't it be easier for everyone if you freed your mind to focus on your career? It felt like a slap in the face. Their gentle words were laced with poison, completely dismissing my worth, treating me like I was invisible. This is how the family plans to get rid of me? I spat out each word, my hand gripping so hard it turned white. Just then, my eyes fell on a stack of papers left carelessly on the kitchen counter. Instinctively, I reached for it and flipped through. The first page was Ethan's credit card statement, debt totaling $63,000, nearly maxed out. The next page was a bank loan rejection letter, reason, insufficient income to prove repayment ability. Finally, there was a pending application to remortgage the house Ethan and I co-owned. I looked up, catching a flash of panic in Ethan's eyes before he quickly masked it. I understood everything now. This lavish family gathering with relatives flown in from everywhere wasn't just a show. It was a plan to build the illusion of a tight-knit family, convincing everyone Ethan was the true head of the house. Then, if I sold my share, he could use it to bail out his crumbling finances. Mom suddenly shot up, reaching for the papers. Aurora, you have no right to look at private documents. That's disrespectful. I stepped back, dodging her hand, a chill running down my spine. They were willing to trample my privacy, but demanded absolute protection for their secret. The music downstairs mocked me, each line of Family is Forever blaring from the speakers, mixing with the guests' gleeful laughter. I knew if I stayed silent now, I would lose everything, not just the house, but my self-respect. No, I said firmly, my voice like steel. I won't sell. And don't expect to get anything more from me. This is my house, and I will protect it. Ethan's face went pale. Mom looked stunned. I grabbed the financial papers and marched up the stairs, my heart pounding, but my mind crystal clear. I had to act, right now. Once inside my room, I locked the door behind me, leaning against the wall, breath ragged like I'd just survived a crash. Ethan's financial papers were still in my hand, the debt numbers dancing before my eyes, drilling in the truth that I had no time to hesitate. I pulled out my suitcase, stuffed in a few sets of clothes, my laptop, research notebook, and important documents I always kept in my mini safe. Then I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and started photographing every corner of my room. Each photo felt like a knife slicing deeper into my emotions. My bedsheets swapped out, my favorite pillow tossed into a corner, chocolate stains smeared on the chair, my desk marred with glass rings and snack crumbs, my bookshelf tilted awkwardly. I captured every detail. The tiny footprints across the hardwood floor, the dents on the cabinet from careless slamming. I knew if I missed even one piece of evidence, Ethan would have an excuse to dismiss everything I said. Next, I opened my private mailbox and dug out the house co-ownership contract Ethan and I had signed in front of a notary. I photographed each page, carefully saving them to both an external hard drive and the cloud. The contract clearly stated, all private spaces of each party must be absolutely respected. Any gathering exceeding 15 people in shared areas requires prior written consent from both co-owners. At exactly 2:00 a.m., I dragged my suitcase out of the house I once thought was my safest haven, my heart heavy but my resolve blazing. I hailed a taxi to a small hotel in Brookline, about 15 minutes' drive from home. The front desk clerk looked at me with concern as I arrived in the middle of the night, but kindly handed me the room key. The moment I lay on the hotel bed, I immediately sat back up, opened my laptop, and started typing an email to Sylvia, my lawyer. In the message, I briefly described the situation, attached the photos and contract, and wrote, Sylvia, I need to meet you urgently tomorrow morning. I suspect Ethan is attempting to seize my assets, violating the co-ownership agreement, and has deceived me about his finances for personal gain. After sending the email, I began drafting a document summarizing the entire chain of events, from being ignored, to unauthorized guests staying in my room, to the pressure to sell my share of the house. I compiled the damages, ruined belongings, missing personal items, and the risk of confidential research leaks from my iPad being carelessly used. I knew a complete file would be my strongest weapon if this had to go to court. Before sleeping, I managed to send a message to Madison, my colleague and the only person I trusted at the Research Institute. Mads, I'm dealing with a serious family situation. I'll need 1 or 2 days off to handle it and might need your help sending documents to the team. The message was marked "Read" within seconds, and her reply warmed my heart. You're not alone. Call me any time you need. The next morning, I was at Sylvia's law office by 7:30, a full hour early. Sylvia, with her silver hair neatly pinned up and a crisp gray blazer, walked in and immediately reassured me. Stay calm, Aurora. Tell me everything. I recounted every detail without leaving anything out, then opened my laptop to show Sylvia each photo and document. She flipped through the co-ownership contract, pointing to the privacy clause, her eyes flashing with steely determination. This will be the key point. They've blatantly violated it. She proposed 2 options. Force Ethan to buy out my share of the house at market value plus compensation for damages, or rent out my portion of the house to secure income and maintain ownership, effectively forcing Ethan to accept sharing the property with a tenant. I want to rent it out, I replied instantly, my voice firm. I refuse to give up what I've bled and sacrificed to earn. Sylvia nodded, immediately drafting an official notice to Ethan demanding he cease all violations and restore my second-floor apartment to its original state within 48 hours, or I would sue and notify all relevant parties, including the bank reviewing his pending loan. Sylvia didn't stop there. She contacted a professional property inspector, arranging an assessment to document damages for a potential lawsuit or negotiation. She also advised me to change the Wi-Fi password, cut all access to the home's internal cameras that Ethan could reach, and secure my personal data. Leaving the law office, I drove back to the hotel, my mind burdened but clearer than ever. I knew this battle would be long and grueling. But I also knew, as long as I stayed determined, they wouldn't easily corner me. I wasn't just defending my assets, but my own self-worth, something my family had trampled on for far too long. And I wouldn't back down. Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop to check my emails, my mind still reeling from the tense morning discussions. A new notification popped up at the top of my inbox. Subject line: European Biomedical Research Council, Collaboration, Opportunity, in Zurich. My heart skipped a beat. I hurriedly opened the email, reading each word in disbelief. Professor Olivier Benoit, the man I'd met at the San Francisco conference, had recommended me for an advanced research project on targeted therapy for breast cancer, a 3-year position at the International Medical Institute in Zurich, Switzerland. In his message, Professor Benoit wrote, "We were deeply impressed by your presentation, Aurora. Your research has the potential to change the treatment of late-stage metastatic breast cancer. If you're interested, the Council would like to invite you to join the research team, with competitive compensation and full support for relocation and living expenses during the collaboration." I read the email over and over, a strange mix of excitement and apprehension surging inside me. This opportunity felt like the dream I once thought was out of reach. Working in a world-class research environment, accessing cutting-edge medical technology, and having enough time to fully focus on my specialty without endless family meetings or snide questions like, "When will you get married? When will you have kids?" I immediately called Madison, her voice still groggy. "Aurora, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. What's going on?" But the moment she heard me say, "I just got an offer to do 3 years of research in Zurich," she jolted awake, shouting over the phone, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Are you going to take it?" I sat in silence for a few seconds. Inside me, a battle raged. Should I follow my passion, or stay and fight to reclaim the house and the faint hope of a family that understood me? But just remembering Ethan's disdainful look and Mom's words like a nail in my heart, "You're a burden," I knew staying would only prolong the pain. "Yes, I'll take it," I said, my voice strangely calm. Madison let out a relieved sigh. "I'm so proud of you. This will be your new chapter, Aurora." I immediately sent a reply email to Professor Benoit, confirming my interest and asking for a few days to wrap up work and sort out the situation at home. Just 20 minutes later, he responded, "We are delighted. The Institute will assist with all visa procedures, relocation, and even provide housing in the Advanced Research Fellows Dormitory. Please let us know when you are ready." This opportunity felt like a lifeline pulling me out of quicksand, but I knew before I left, I had to settle every loose end. I called lawyer Sylvia, informing her of my decision to move to Switzerland. She was silent for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "Aurora, this is the right move. But before you go, we must ensure your rights are fully protected." She suggested accelerating the process of renting out my apartment to secure stable income from my share of the house while I was in Switzerland. This would let me keep ownership and prevent Ethan from selling the entire property without my consent. Sylvia also drafted an official notice to Ethan, stating clearly that I would be away long-term, but still retained full legal ownership and decision-making power over my portion of the house. I proactively contacted a property management company in Boston to handle finding tenants, maintaining the apartment, and collecting rent. They assured me they would represent me in any disputes. In just a few short days, I finalized nearly every step to prepare for the biggest journey of my life. That evening, I returned home to collect the remaining original documents. The house was still buzzing with people, the smell of old food mixed with strong liquor, as if pushing me out faster. Hannah shot me a glare as I slipped through the living room, and Ethan blocked the bottom of the stairs. Where have you been all week, Aurora? Mom's been so worried. I took a deep breath, staring him straight in the eyes. I've sent you a notification by email. I'm moving to Zurich for a 3-year research project, and you'd better read the ownership terms carefully, because any further violations will result in a lawsuit. Ethan's face drained of color, and my mother, sitting in the corner, gasped, eyes welling with tears. Daughter, are you really going to abandon your mother? If you leave, who will I have? I looked at her, seeing true frailty for the first time. But years of bottled-up hurt pushed me past any softness. Mom, you abandoned me a long time ago. I turned away, dragging my suitcase down the steps. Inside me, fear was gone, replaced by a profound relief. I had finally found the path forward, one that belonged to me alone. The next morning, I arrived at the offices of Elmwood Realty, a property management company specializing in shared assets, known for its team of lawyers ready to protect owners' rights. I was greeted by Marcus Lane, a senior manager with a stern face and sharp eyes. After I briefly explained my situation, Marcus nodded slightly and slid a folder toward me. We will handle everything for you: finding tenants, managing the apartment, collecting rent, and maintaining it. Most importantly, we will establish a legal barrier with your co-owner, preventing any further infringement. Marcus suggested sending staff to my second-floor apartment that week to inspect, photograph its current state, and set a fair rental price. What pleased me most was their full legal representation service. Any requests from Ethan or anyone in the family about my share of the house would have to go through Elmwood, and the company had authority to respond and sign related decisions on my behalf within the contract's scope. That afternoon, I drafted an official email to Ethan, Mom, and Hannah. The subject line: notification of legal ownership and house use conditions. In the email, I listed key points from our co-ownership contract. Section 3. No one may allow outsiders to use the other party's private space without prior written consent. Section 5. Gatherings of 15 people or more must have approval at least 14 days in advance. Section 7. Any costs arising from damage in private spaces will be borne by the violating party. I made it clear in the email. Starting today, I have signed a contract with Elmwood Realty to manage the apartment under my ownership. All transactions, agreements, or inquiries must be made in writing through Elmwood. I will not address any issues via phone calls, face-to-face meetings, or personal text messages. After sending the email, I forwarded a copy of the Elmwood contract to Sylvia, also asking her legal team to prepare a notice for all adjacent neighbors, so they understood my ownership rights and could serve as witnesses if any violations occurred. Within hours, Ethan started calling non-stop. I quietly turned off my phone, sticking to my rule: no answering. Soon after, the hotel phone rang with Mom's number flashing on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, letting it go silent. Then messages poured in. Aurora, you and I need to talk right now. Don't make this worse. What do you think you're doing? From Ethan, his tone a mix of anger and panic. Do you really want to tear this family apart? Hannah's message, with a crying face emoji. I didn't reply to any of them, only took screenshots of the messages and saved them in my incident file. I knew a single rash word on a call could be twisted into "Aurora agreed," so I was determined to keep all communication strictly in email or legal documents. The next day, an employee from Elmwood, Becca, came to inspect the second-floor apartment with me and Marcus. As we opened the door, the smell of dampness and old food hit us, with stains from the previous party still left uncleaned. Becca photographed every detail, noting each damage: the living room carpet stained with red wine, the warped bookshelf, and a mattress showing signs of having been slept on overnight. Marcus shook his head. This is undeniable evidence. We'll demand compensation for you. That evening, Elmwood sent me a draft lease agreement, along with a detailed report. The average rental price for a private apartment in the Newton area was $2,400 a month. They suggested a short-term lease of 1 year, with an option to extend if I stayed in Zurich. I approved immediately, feeling like I'd finally regained control over what was rightfully mine. Marcus sent a certified letter on my behalf to Ethan and Mom, attaching the pending lease agreement and clearly warning any attempt to obstruct or interfere would face legal action for violating my protected ownership rights under the co-ownership contract and Massachusetts real estate law. Just 2 days later, Ethan emailed me a reply, his words cold but betraying his helplessness. "We can negotiate. Sell your share of the house to me and we can end this peacefully." I smiled bitterly but didn't respond. I had chosen my path: keep my share, rent it out to maintain ownership, protect my assets, and free myself from their manipulation. That night, I received a congratulatory message from Professor Benoit. "Aurora, Zurich is ready. We are looking forward to having you." I lay back on the hotel bed, feeling truly free for the first time in years, knowing this was just the beginning. Only a few days after Elmwood's official notice was sent, my phone began ringing non-stop, morning, noon, night. Every few minutes, missed calls popped up from Ethan, Mom, or Hannah. When I didn't answer, a flood of messages arrived, starting with threats. "You're destroying this family, Aurora. I won't let this go. Mom will sue you for being ungrateful." I sat on the hotel bed, reading each message without replying, only taking screenshots to save to my case file. But day by day, the tone of their texts shifted from threats to pleading. "Sweetheart, I didn't know you weren't told about the party. I thought Ethan had said something. I'm sorry, I thought you wouldn't care since you're always at the lab. Please don't do this, Aurora. We can sit down as a family and talk. Don't let outsiders get involved." I realized this change in tone wasn't from genuine remorse, but because they were beginning to see I was no longer the weak person they remembered. Especially once neighbors started gossiping about the loud party, and the management company sent letters to every house in the area explaining my legal ownership. Ethan and Mom must have felt the weight of the community's scrutiny. On the third evening after everything exploded, I received a video call from Mom. I hesitated, then answered. Her face appeared on screen, puffy red eyes and exhausted expression. "Aurora, do you still see me as your mother?" she choked out. I looked at her, my heart aching. But memories of being sidelined, of silent dinners filled only with praise for Ethan, surged back. "Mom," I said calmly, "you chose to treat me like a stranger a long time ago. You never asked how I felt when my achievements were ignored, while Ethan was worshipped for trivial things." Mom sniffled, tears streaming down her face. "I know, I haven't been fair, but what you're doing now is tearing me apart. People keep calling me, saying you're suing your brother, suing the whole family." Her voice wavered, more worried about her reputation than my well-being. "I'm not suing anyone," I said firmly. "I'm protecting my legal rights. If everyone respects them, I won't have to do anything more. But if anyone crosses the line again, my lawyer will act." She fell silent, her lips trembling, then whispered, "Is it true? You didn't know anything about the party? Ethan said he texted you, that you knew everything." I let out a hollow laugh, my eyes burning. "I wasn't even told once. I found out through the Family Forever banner hanging right in my own living room." I saw Mom sway, someone out of frame catching her, probably Hannah. Then Ethan's uneasy voice cut in. "Aurora, I'm sorry. I just wanted to have a warm party to make Mom happy. I didn't mean for things to get like this." I gripped my phone tightly, looking straight through the screen. "You wanted to make Mom happy, but you trampled our agreement and erased my existence in the house I helped pay for. And you hid your debt from Mom, didn't you?" The screen went dead silent. I heard Mom's panicked breathing, frantic whispers. Ethan looked down, avoiding my gaze. The air in the call turned heavy with tension. Finally, Mom croaked out, "Are you really going to leave, go to Switzerland, and abandon me?" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. I'm not abandoning you, Mom. I'll always be your daughter. But I can't stay in this house of lies. I have to go. To find myself again. Will you ever come back? She asked, her voice breaking. That depends on how everyone treats me in my share of the house, I replied, resolute but without anger. I'm not closing the door forever, but I won't let anyone dictate my life ever again. The call ended and I sat in silence, tears streaming down, not exactly from pain, but because a weight had finally lifted from my heart. For the first time, I had spoken my mind without fear of being labeled the ungrateful daughter. The next morning, I received an email from Elmwood Realty. They had found a potential tenant for my apartment, a visiting professor from Canada who needed long-term housing in Boston. I accepted immediately. This news felt like the final nail in the coffin of Ethan's attempts to manipulate me. My phone kept buzzing with messages, alternating between threats, blame, and half-hearted apologies. But I no longer felt afraid. I had chosen my path and knew with certainty, from now on, I would write the story of my own life. In less than a week after that tearful call with Mom, I received the official contract from the International Cancer Research Institute in Zurich. All I needed to do was sign and send it back, and I would become a member of a 3-year research team with benefits beyond anything I'd ever dreamed of. A state-of-the-art lab, specialized housing for experts, and access to Europe's largest oncology data archive. I signed immediately, my pen stroke firm, as if to cement my resolve. The day I stepped off the plane in Zurich, the air was cool and crisp, with a light drizzle falling. The Institute's shuttle met me right at the terminal, and a polite staff member helped carry my luggage into my new apartment. Small but cozy, perfectly equipped, and nestled near the picturesque Lake Zurich. I knew this was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. In those first days, I immersed myself in work, attending team meetings and jumping straight into experiments I had dreamed of since my doctoral thesis. At night, I strolled along the lake, sipping hot cocoa, realizing that for the first time in years, I was living completely for myself, without worrying about pleasing anyone or fearing criticism. Over a year passed, and I grew quickly into my role as a research team leader. Our first paper on initial experimental results was accepted by the European Biomedical Journal, promising a new treatment avenue for late-stage cancer patients. This breakthrough earned me an invitation back to Boston to present our findings and share insights with former colleagues. Returning to Boston, stepping off the plane, everything felt familiar, but I knew I had changed. At the conference, I was the keynote speaker, and the hall fell silent as I presented. During the Q&A, I received countless handshakes and collaboration offers from major hospitals across the United States. After the conference, I decided to do something I never thought I'd be brave enough to do: meet with my family again. I invited Mom, Ethan, and Hannah to dinner at a small restaurant not far from the old house. When Mom walked in, she looked much older, her hair grayer, her eyes a mix of joy and nervousness. Ethan seemed uneasy, while Hannah stayed silent, avoiding my gaze. Throughout dinner, no one brought up the past. Conversation stayed on trivial topics, but I knew the silence was heavy with unspoken fears about the future of the house. I set down my spoon and looked straight at Ethan. "Do you still want to buy my share of the house?" He froze for a moment, then nodded slightly. Mom quickly cut in. "Aurora, if you sell, will I still be able to stay? That's my home." I took Mom's hand, my voice calm. "You will live there for the rest of your life, but I have one condition. Part of the sale proceeds will fund the Charles Miller Scholarship, supporting medical students researching cancer, named after Dad, the one who always believed in me." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise, and Mom paused before tears streamed down her cheeks. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. I nodded, smiling lightly for the first time in a long while. The next day, I met with Sylvia and Ethan, along with his lawyer, to finalize the sale of my share at market price plus compensation for previous damages. I insisted the contract state Mom's lifelong right to live in the guest apartment and that the Charles Miller Scholarship be established as soon as the transaction closed. As I signed the contract, I felt no sense of loss, only relief, like I had completed my mission for the house filled with both sweet and bitter memories. Ethan shook my hand, his voice low. "Thank you for not abandoning Mom. And I'm sorry for everything." I simply replied, "Use this chance to make Dad proud. Don't repeat the same mistakes." That evening, Mom called me. In our conversation, she quietly admitted, "I know I was wrong. I'll learn to respect you if you'll give me the chance." I paused, then said, "I'll give you a chance, just like you once gave me life." Returning to Zurich, I felt lighter than ever. I had affirmed my worth, protected my rights to the very end, yet still left the door open for family, on the condition that it be based on truth and respect. I understood. Growing up isn't about abandoning everything, but about learning to set boundaries, to love yourself first, and, if there's still a chance, to forgive from a place where you're no longer afraid of being trampled. Back in Zurich, I quickly threw myself into work at the Research Institute. Each morning, I woke up early, ran along the lake, then enjoyed coffee in my sunlit kitchen, ready for a busy day. On weekends, I cooked and chatted with colleagues from all over the world, sharing our passion for research and our personal stories. I realized that for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by a family that didn't force me to become someone I wasn't. Gradually, I began rewriting the meaning of family for myself. Family was no longer a place where I had to sacrifice my voice or struggle for approval. Family was people who listened, respected me, and celebrated my success. That could be Madison, the only friend who never blamed me for being focused on my work; Professor Benoit, who encouraged me to keep researching instead of pressuring me to settle down; or colleagues who were always there when I needed them. One winter evening, as Zurich was blanketed in snow, I received a message from Ethan. Mom was just diagnosed with high blood pressure, and the doctor advised her to avoid stress. "I'm just letting you know, nothing more." I read the message over and over, then simply replied, "Thanks for letting me know. Please take care of Mom for me." I no longer felt the fear of being manipulated like before. It was the calm reaction of someone who knows their own worth and is no longer easily bound by guilt. More than a year after moving to Switzerland, my research was officially published in a prestigious medical journal. The paper made a significant impact, opening opportunities for Phase 2 clinical trials in several European hospitals. My research team was invited to numerous conferences, and I became the face of our project, something I once only dreamed about. Late one night, while cleaning up the lab, I received a video call from Mom. She sat in front of the screen, her eyes sad but with a rare glint of sincerity. "Aurora, I read the paper and saw your name. My doctor also mentioned the therapy you're working on. I'm proud, truly proud." I went quiet for a few seconds, then smiled. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was the first sign of change. I leaned back, reflecting on everything that had happened. The old house no longer belonged to me, but I didn't feel any loss. I had found a place where I truly belonged. A life, a career, and people who recognized my worth. I understood that sometimes we have to let go of what no longer nourishes us in order to grow. The major year-end conference, when I shared my journey of finding my own voice, the entire hall fell silent. I ended my talk with a question. Have you ever realized your boundaries were being crossed, but stayed silent out of fear of being labeled ungrateful? Maybe it's time we redraw our lines, even with those closest to us, to protect ourselves. Under the stage lights, I saw nodding heads and eyes welling with tears. I knew my story wasn't just mine. It belonged to many others still struggling between family ties and their own sense of self-worth. That evening, when a new colleague asked, "Aurora, don't you feel lonely being away from your family?" I just smiled and replied softly, "Family doesn't have to share your blood. More importantly, it should be where you feel respected and safe." Before leaving the auditorium, I paused in front of the glass doors, catching my reflection against Zurich's shimmering lights. I saw a determined woman, no longer the girl who bowed her head at questions like, "When are you getting married?" or feared being called the weirdo who only cares about work. I knew challenges would still come, but I was ready to face them. Because I had learned, when you dare to stand up for yourself, that's when you truly grow up. I hope you, listening to this story, will also find the courage to set your own boundaries, even when it means facing the people you love most. Remember, family doesn't have the right to hurt you just because they share your blood. You deserve love, respect, and the space to grow, even if that means walking away. What do you think about my journey? Have you ever had to set boundaries with your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful family stories.